Hey Atlanta, say hello to Small Business Help from Apple. That's right, we're here to make starting and running your business simpler. From helping you choose the right devices to setting them up hassle-free, we can help you build your business in no time. Speak to a business expert and get the help you need at no cost whatsoever. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/smallbusiness or visit an Apple store to learn more.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Hello, America. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the nation. The phone number, 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I would be delighted to have you with me if you text the word Army to 33777. Just follow along with me here. We are starting. The show is growing. I can't tell you the stations yet, but in about 20 days from now, we will be on 13 more stations, and then we'll be picking up some more in the new year. The show is starting to grow and pretty rapidly, and in some areas, the local stations want to know. Like, for example, I can see our live stream data. We've got a lot of people who listen to the show on live stream, and being able to ask those people, text Army to 33777, fill out the information, your name, your email, your zip code, and we can send you an email after the first of the year as these stations are talking to us and say, hey, will y'all reach out and just prove that, yes, actually, we do listen. It would be wonderful if you would consider doing that. Text Army to 33777, help us grow. And also, you'll then get into the activist portal. You'll be able to see your members of Congress, their phone numbers, your local city government phone numbers, all that. It will be fantastic. Very, very happy to have you participate. Would very much like it. Now, we must move on. I will resist. My boss is texting me at the moment. I will wait for commercial break to text him back. Because otherwise, I can talk and type at the same time, but my producer knows when I do that, and he gets very upset with me. We got to talk about Joe Biden anyway. As much as I can multitask, Joe Biden is incapable of multitasking, but his bureaucrats are capable. And it's part of the problem we're dealing with in this country right now is the Biden team has decided that they want to complicate Donald Trump's energy push. Now, let me step back from a 50,000-foot view down. We're never going to get rid of fossil fuels, at least within the next 100 years. Here's why. Your plastics, a lot of it derived from fossil fuels. The rubber on your car tires for your battery-powered car, fossil fuels. Much of your synthetic clothing fibers, fossil fuels. And then we got the problems of, the military. Your tanks are never going to be battery-powered. Think about Ukraine. Ukraine has the wintertime and then the snow melt in the spring. And instead of killing fields, it's mud fields. And even the gas-powered tanks get stuck in the mud. And the battery-powered tanks would be extraordinarily heavy. You wouldn't be able to cross a bridge with a battery-powered tank. The bridge would collapse. You get into the muddy fields of Ukraine, they're going to be stuck. We're not going to have battery-powered jets. Think about this. They're trying to build a battery-powered jet, and they tested one through my neck of the woods a while back, and it could make what is a 3-hour car ride from Macon, Georgia to Augusta, Georgia. It could make that trek. Then it had to stop and charge. Think about a Boeing 777 or a Boeing 787. Boeing 787 actually does have some lithium-ion batteries on board. Remember, originally it caused problems. There were fires. They fixed the problems. It's a composite jet. It's much lighter. There are allegedly issues with the composite materials, but nonetheless, just assume for the sake of all things that they're great jets. They can fly halfway around the world nonstop. They still require fossil fuels. The combines and harvesters of the farmers of America are going to still use fossil fuel. The tractors still use fossil fuels. The weight of the battery, look, there are already problems in place in this country, including in Atlanta, Georgia. They had a parking garage collapse under the weight of a bunch of battery-powered cars. You can't put a bunch of battery-powered cars inside second floors of parking garages because the weight of the cars combined is so much more than the weight of other vehicles. The infrastructure costs to rebuild is overwhelming. We're not going to get rid of it, and yet the left has convinced themselves that they can get rid of fossil fuels. And part of the issue here is as they restrict fossil fuels in this country, they drive up the cost of fossil fuels in this country. They drive up the cost of gas. One of the best ways we could get rid of inflation is to increase our oil and gas production. Now, it is true. God's honest truth. There is greater production of natural gas and oil in this country right now than there was when Donald Trump left the presidency. And that was an all-time high, and we've passed that. Part of the issue, however, is COVID, because COVID wound things down. Remember where, like, the price of a barrel of oil was negative? Like, the oil companies were paying you to take the oil off their hands for a time during COVID? That crippled the oil industry for a time. They took some reserves off. They took some refineries off. But now everything's back. However, here's the problem. We're not building new oil refineries. So we're capping out our supply. And yet, thanks to AI, thanks to fracking, we're rapidly able to produce more oil in this country. And in fact, there was a story out last week that some oil companies are experiencing with AI, and it is extrapolating more oil reserves. And in fact, using the AI and fracking, they have determined that this country probably has more oil reserves than the Middle East, particularly Saudi Arabia and Iran combined. We have massive amounts of oil deposits in this country that are untapped, and those that have been tapped could be tapped more efficiently with the help of AI and fracking. The Biden administration is launching a series of regulations to make it virtually impossible to drill in Anwar. During Trump's administration, they passed a law that would require drilling in Anwar. The Biden administration, in compliance with that law, is passing regulations to make it possible, but the regulations are so burdensome, companies aren't going to be able to comply with it. There is a January 9th sale. Biden opposes the drilling. So the Biden administration, according to Axios, is putting in place regulations that will drive up the cost of oil extraction with environmental concerns and care for the polar bears and the like. But it's not just that. There's also natural gas pipelines. The Biden administration is adding extra regulations to liquid natural gas pipelines, and the Department of Energy has been studying LNG in such a way that most people believe the study is going to come out and claim that it's a net negative in this country to do more natural gas. Some of the executive orders of the Biden administration will go away very quickly. But the regulations will take time to repeal. See, there's a misunderstanding, and Trump in his first term ran afoul of the Supreme Court several times doing this. The misunderstanding was this idea that because administration Obama adopted certain regulations, the Trump administration can come in, just snap their finger and say, nope, those regulations are gone now. Except what Chief Justice Roberts said in each of those times was, yes, you can get rid of a past administration's regulations, but you must follow the same procedure they followed. You can't just snap your finger and say it's gone. You must follow proper procedure put in place by Congress. And that's going to slow everything down. And Biden understands something many people seem hysterically unable to understand. This is it for Trump. There's only one term. There's only one term. He's not going to have 8 years to undo the damage. He's only going to have 4. He's going to have to move very, very fast. On top of that is the issue with the National Labor Relations Board. The National Labor Relations Board has a vacancy. The Senate Democrats are moving to try to fill that vacancy. And if so, despite the Trump administration taking power January 20th of 2025, there will be a Democratic majority on the National Labor Relations Board until 2026. The Americans for Prosperity, one of my advertisers, is actually mobilizing conservative organizations to fight this. The person's name is Lauren McFerrin. She is very far left. Joe Biden moved last month to nominate her. She's been winding her way through the Senate. We don't know what Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema are going to do, but we also don't know about the Republicans. If every Republican shows up and Sinema and Manchin move to stop her nomination is dead. Manchin has been at war with Biden over the National Labor Relations Board. Sinema is just, she's given up. They haven't seen her in Congress. If she doesn't show up, it's fine, as long as all the Republicans show up. They got to stop Lauren McFerrin from being on the National Labor Relations Board. She's even so far left that J.D. Vance, who's very union sympathetic, is like, she's too liberal, too progressive. The Biden administration is trying to lay traps for Donald Trump right now. That's what they're doing in this last month in office. They're trying to complicate his ability to live up to his platform on energy efficiency and energy expansion. They're trying to complicate his labor reforms for the free market. They're trying to even complicate his foreign policy. We'll get into that at the bottom of the hour. What Donald Trump is going to need is something that he lacked in his first term. Very good lawyers. He had some good lawyers his first term, but he also had a lot of bad lawyers, and he didn't have enough. He's got to have a lot of lawyers. He's got to be lawyered up. Now, thus far, it's very encouraging. The lawyers, the caliber of the lawyers that he's hiring, it looks good to me. But with the energy regulations in particular, here's the thing. When we produce way more energy in this country, the price of gas goes down. When our energy costs go down, the production of groceries goes down. The production of beef costs go down. The production of farmer costs go down because so much of their costs have to do with the price of a gallon of diesel or gas, because that's going to be factored in for the tractors, for the combines, for the harvesters, for the planters, for everything. You lower energy prices in this country, you fight inflation. You lower energy costs in this country, you meaningfully improve lives. And if Donald Trump wants to add tariffs like he says he wants to do, he needs to lower energy prices as much as possible. But part of that as well is going to require Congress to incentivize producing new oil refineries and new gas pipelines. You know, there's I got a, what is it, McKesson, whatever it is, the natural gas pipeline company. I own stock in the company. Now I can't think of the name. Got a letter from them the other day. They want to add they have a natural gas pipeline in my backyard, literally runs through my backyard. Got an easement. And they've decided, instead of constructing a new line, they want to expand an existing pipeline to add a second pipeline on top of the existing pipeline, because they already own the land. They're studying it. They're looking at the cost, all that sort of stuff within the same easement. They've been waiting to see how the election went. Donald Trump won, and now it looks like they're going to go full steam ahead and construct this pipeline, which they need to do, and I'm not opposed to it. I mean, I don't see it. It's buried underground, but also it would be very good for the economy. We need more capacity in the country. What the Biden administration has been doing with the regulatory approach is to reduce as much capacity as possible, which drives up prices, causes inflation, and hurts our ability to compete on the world stage. The fact that they can't get over their ideological religiosity towards climate change has been a problem, and now Trump's there. We got time to fix this, and I hope we do. Hello, it's Eric Erickson here. Welcome back. The phone number 877-973-7425. I had several people, including my buddy Andy, texted me and he said, hey, I got a question for you. Isn't there a rule that if a regulation is passed in the final 3 months of one administration, the second administration can repeal it without the filibuster preventing it? Yes. There is a law that if an administration, and I actually think it's the last 6 months maybe now, not the last 3 months, it was a law passed in the Clinton administration that if regulations are passed in the final months of an outgoing administration, the new administration in Congress can not only, one, repeal those rules with just a simple majority vote in the Senate, no filibuster allowed, but also those rules can never be adopted again. And so the multiple people are asking, well, why can't Congress do that? I'm glad you are, and I'm glad you caught that, but there's a catch here. So the new leases and sales for land rights with the Anwar land is going to be released January 9th. And so the leases are going to have the regulatory language in it. And because the leases will have the regulatory language, that's an exception to the rule. Because an outside entity will be agreeing to the regulatory language through a lease, those regulations cannot be undone by the new Congress automatically. They have to be redone at the regulatory level. So it's possible to change them, but the change will have to come over time. Now, why? Why can't Congress just snap their finger? Because in our Constitution, there's a contract right. And if you enter into a contract with the federal government, the Congress cannot just automatically change the terms of the contract. There's a process that is a regulatory process. And the rule that allows the new Congress to get rid of old regulations without the filibuster doesn't apply to regulations adopted by lease, because of the contract clause in the Constitution. It's somewhat of a complex matter constitutionally, but the bottom line is any regulation adopted by an outgoing administration can be undone by a simple majority vote of the House and the Senate without a filibuster, except regulations enacted through leases, because that impacts the contract right in the Constitution. So that's the way they're trying to bind the Trump administration, using contracts that will take time to undo. Now, we got to move on to other things. But before I do, I got to tell you about Swiss America. They've been warning people about a secret war on cash. Now, they're rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau, and they want to be able to help you with your retirement and finances. They are the trusted leader for 40 years in this country for precious metals, and they're seeing what this particular administration has been doing with regulation to try to track your spending of cash. It is a secret war on cash. They have a report they'd love to get to you completely for free. It takes less than 15 minutes to read, and all you have to do is call or text 800-289-2646. Mention my name, Eric, E-R-I-C-K. The All-Out War on Cash, digital forms of currency included, is growing. So read the Secret War on Cash report completely free. Just mention Eric, E-R-I-C-K, when you call or text 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. It's a free report. Just mention my name, Eric, when you call or text 800-289-2646. Message and data rates may apply. Swiss America would love to have a relationship with you. Reach out to them today, 800-289-2646. Hello and welcome. It's Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. I love the way you guys think. My buddy Derek sent me a direct message on Twitter asking a question, and then Connie is here on hold asking the same question. Connie, welcome to the Eric Erickson Show. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. This is so exciting to talk to you. I hope
Thank
you're doing
you.
well.
I am. Thanks.
Okay, so my question is, these companies that are supposed to sign a lease on January the 9th, why can't they just choose not to sign and wait until Trump gets in office?
Okay, so my buddy Derek sends me this direct note. Couldn't the signatories to the leases be put on notice not to sign them until the new administration so they could be altered? If they don't go until January 9th, that leaves time to back out. Y'all are channeling me, and I should have said this. This is part of the problem with Donald Trump's first term was the presumption of being a shoo-in for a second term. So the way the Republicans wrote this law back in 2017 to expand ANWR was to presume Trump was going to have a second term. So literally what the law says is that these leases have to be completed by January 19th of 2025, or the whole process has to start over again. So, yeah, so Biden won, not Trump. And Biden, by the way, doesn't want to do any of the leases. And the reason they're doing it January 9th is because by law, they've got to be done. There will be penalties to the federal government according to the terms and provisions. And I shouldn't say penalties, that's a bad word, but essentially the president is ordered to do this by January 19th of 2025. He has no choice. If there is one carve-out provision in there that if there is it's a couple of problems, and I cannot remember exactly what the caveats are, but the whole regulatory process would start over again. It would be expedited, so it would only take a year. It wouldn't take 5 years, but it would still slow it down by a year. So the Biden administration decided because their regulatory process was concluded, they can't now start a new regulatory process and say there's a problem. They have to comply with the terms of the legislation, which says all the leases have to be completed by January 19th. So that's where we are. And again, the whole law was written on the premise that Donald Trump was going to win a second term. So we'd let the Trump administration do it in the second term and make sure that it was all said and done before a Democrat got elected. And instead, Joe Biden got elected. Now, you will note that Joe Biden could have done this 3 years ago, but Joe Biden decided to drag it out until the very end. And the law is very specific. All the leases have to be gotten out the door by January 19th once the regulatory process is concluded. So, again, now as I'm talking, I'm remembering the answer to why doesn't Biden just cancel and start over. So the way the law is written, the regulatory process, once it's concluded, you got to get everything done by January 19th. Well, Biden finished the regulatory process. They finished the regulatory process a year and a half ago. So he's dragged his feet to the end. And their lawyer's conclusion was they can't say, oh, we found a problem, we have to start over and extend the leases another year or so, because they did a thorough regulatory process. So they've just waited until the end. And in the process, what they did with the regulations is they added all of these little carve-outs of what they can and cannot do. They shrunk the footprint that you're allowed to drill from. They added environmental burdens, things like that. And so they actually think that they can get these leases out. Congress can't undo them. Trump's not going to start the process over because it's going to take a long time, and the companies are just going to suck it up. Now, here's an exception to all of this. You get the leases. Trump can work with Congress and the corporations to agree to alter the leases. That's your carve-out. Now, it can be filibustered. That's the problem. But if Trump and the corporations get together on January 21st and say, hey, let's agree to make changes to the leases and the underlying regulations, they can do it. It's just something that the Senate Democrats could filibuster if they wanted to. But there are processes. It's just going to slow them down, and that's the point. Is Biden can't stop Trump from making these changes. He can just slow Trump down for making the changes because he knows Trump's only got 4 years and a lot of other stuff to deal with. That's one of the problems, honestly. In my personal opinion, don't shoot. My personal opinion. Regardless of the nominees, I'm not going to give any of the names of the nominees. Some of them I like, some of them don't. But regardless of the nominees, if we go through protracted confirmation processes, Trump's not going to have boots on the ground day one in his administration to get things done. And every second is going to count for Donald Trump. Every single second is going to count for Donald Trump. So he's got to have his entire team in place day one in order to have the impact that we want him to have. Now, going to move on, because it's not just oil leases that Joe Biden is screwing up. He's also screwing up the Middle East and everything else. I got to play you Jonathan Lemire. Now, you got to understand, Jonathan Lemire is a very progressive reporter. He gets his station on MSNBC because he's so progressive, and he writes at Politico. He's a chief Washington correspondent. Dude just wants to hump the Democrats' leg. I mean, he is like a rabid little chihuahua going to town on somebody's leg. As long as that person is a Democrat. Remember, Jonathan Lemire is the guy who, when Joe Biden said that Donald Trump supporters were garbage or trash, he's the one who's like, oh, no. He meant this one guy on stage. That's what he meant. Here's the altered transcript. And he tried to defend he tried to exercise inordinate amounts of damage control. It was beclowning, but he dug his feet in because he's humping Biden's leg. And so on MSNBC this morning, this was the conversation with him on foreign policy.
Administration officials en route to the region now to start getting the lay of the land in since Assad has been deposed. You're right. President Biden was just in Africa, a trip that Donald Trump never made during his first term in office. It fulfilled a campaign promise, Biden to go. And this is going to be a deeply consequential foreign policy legacy for this president. And certainly there have been questions even within his own party, how he is cozied up to Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel. But we're seeing there the changes in Lebanon with Hezbollah down. Of course, the situation in Gaza continues. There are still hostages. We're seeing his support for Ukraine and how that has shaped alliances and shaped Europe. And now he will be handing off to his successor, who obviously has very different foreign policy views, but he hasn't done so just yet. And that's a key point. Though Trump has been on the global stage, we know he was in Paris over the weekend. The Biden team, the Biden administration is still conducting foreign policy and will to until the last minute.
Right. So you got to understand this. To set the stage here, Jonathan Lemire writes for Politico, and he is responding in part to a piece from his own publication. The headline is Biden shrinks from view ahead of Trump's return to Washington. And the subtitle, with 42 days left in office, Biden avoids unscripted moments or press questions. Joe Biden is president of the United States for 42 more days, but within the Democratic Party on Capitol Hill and even within his own administration, it feels like he left the Oval Office weeks ago. Biden has effectively disappeared from the radar in the wake of Democrats' bruising electoral loss. Since November 5th, he's largely stuck to prepared remarks, avoided unscripted public appearances or press questions, and opted to sit out the raging debate over Donald Trump's victory, policy conversations in Congress, and the Democratic Party's future. He's been so cavalier and selfish about how he approaches the final weeks of the job, said a former White House official. That means someone who worked for him. Jen Psaki, maybe? I don't know. Across nearly 2 weeks abroad since the election, Biden spoke just 7 words to the media traveling with him. He has yet to schedule a post-election press conference, as Presidents Obama and Bush did when they were on their way out of office. He went to the Rose Garden to publicly praise the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, met with Israeli President Isaac Herzog, and spoke to the press Sunday about Bashar al-Assad fleeing Syria. But otherwise, his post-election domestic schedule has been filled with events such as honoring the 2024 NBA champions, thanking longtime supporters at a South Lawn dinner, and participating in a Friendsgiving event. Biden's low profile since the election has contributed to the sense of rudderlessness that's taken hold across swaths of Washington as lawmakers, aides, and party officials brace for Trump's return to power and seek a new direction and vision ahead of the midterms in 2028. The White House and Biden, they say, has shown little interest in helping chart the party's future beyond January 20th, the day of Trump's inauguration. Biden has focused his aides' energies largely on managing the presidential transition and tending to a few final items meant to burnish his legacy, including a speech on the economy happening today, and Vice President Kamala Harris, who cast herself on the campaign trail as the future of the party, has all but disappeared from the scene. There's no leadership. It's a total vacuum, one Democrat close to senior lawmakers said bluntly. It's kind of funny how very few of them want to speak on the record. While Biden has offered little in the way of leadership, officials say there's also not much demand from the party's rank and file to hear from a president they blame for relegating them back into the minority. In conversations that I've having, they don't even mention the president. It's kind of sad, said one Democrat close to senior lawmakers. It feels like Trump is president already. It sure does. It sure does. Y'all, I gotta say, Jonathan Lemire can do his proverbial leg humping of Joe Biden's leg, But Joe Biden really isn't much of a leader, nor has he ever been. Just think about where we are. Syria has collapsed. The Israelis, by the way, as I'm talking to you right now, as I am talking to you, the Israelis are bombing the Syrian ports, blowing up Syrian military vessels. And also they're bombing supposed warehouses harboring chemical weapons. They're literally, as I'm speaking right now, there are explosions in Syria from the Israelis. Ukraine and Russia are still fighting. North Korea is now involved in Ukraine. China and Iran are helping Russia. Israel has been fighting on 3 fronts now: Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza. By the way, Iran has gotten $10 billion more out of Washington. That's right. This is from the Washington Free Beacon, happening today. The Biden-Harris administration waived sanctions on Iran, providing Tehran access to $10 billion in once-frozen funds. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken determined that, quote, it is in the national security interest of the United States to waive mandatory economic sanctions that bar Iraq from transferring $10 billion to Iran in electricity import payments. So remember, it is this administration that says Iran always uses its income to fund terror, and they're getting $10 billion more to fund terror, thanks to the Biden administration. You've got China, ever expansionist. The Chinese have been hacking our cell phones so much so, the Biden administration is encouraging Americans to use iMessage and WhatsApp on their phones. The idea that Joe Biden somehow leaves us in a better place, it may play well to Democrats, but it's a lie. It's not true. The world is at war on Joe Biden's watch. And the Democrats can make excuses for it all they want. It's simply not the case that Joe Biden has been good for the world, for American foreign policy, or for American leadership of the world. And everyone seems to be just absolutely flat out ready for Donald Trump to get back into office and bring some order to Joe Biden's chaos. The Democrats on Capitol Hill, they no longer care about Joe Biden. You should care about cleaning the air in your house with the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. You can get 3 of them and save $200 by going to EdenPureDeals.com. Put in discount code ERIC3, ERICK3 at EdenPureDeals.com. Hold it in your hand. It's so small, you hold it in your hand. It has a plug that flips out. You can plug it to the wall, or you can use a USB cord and plug it up in your car. I've used mine in my car and in rental cars to clean the air. Someone smoked in the car. It wipes out smoke odors, litter box odors, dirty diaper odors, musty odors, fishy odors, you name it. It wipes out every odor because it generates ozone that locks onto the ions of odors, wipes them out, gets rid of every odor. It also now generates plasma that kills 99.9% of bacteria and viruses, in addition to trapping pet dander, pollen, and dust that float through the air. So you get cleaner air and you get better smelling air with the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. And you can get 3 of them for less than $200. You can save $200. Get one for upstairs, downstairs, your basement, your attic, your RV, your travel bag. And again, so small you can keep it in your travel bag. I do. EdenPureDeals.com. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code ERIC3, ERICK3 at EdenPureDeals.com. Welcome back. It's Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, as always, if you text Eric, ERICK, to 33777, you get the live stream, the show notes, the podcast, all that. Y'all, Nobel laureates, 75 of them have said the Senate should reject Robert Kennedy Jr.'s nomination. Now, I'm opposed to Robert Kennedy Jr. as well. I think in addition to him being a horrible human being, he's a terrible conspiracy theorist who doesn't just reject crazy things. He rejects a lot of reasonable, good, and sound things like vaccines, and his supporters like to play 3-card monte where they shuffle things around hoping you don't pay attention to all of his insane statements about vaccines causing autism and other things. He's, no, he didn't challenge regular vaccines, just or no baloney. I apparently know more about him than most of his supporters do. He's a horrible human being. He should not be Secretary of Health and Human Services, but he's probably going to get confirmed thanks to 75 Nobel laureates saying he should not be. He would put the public's health in jeopardy. Do the Democrats not understand anything? You trotted out a letter of a bajillion national security experts assuring Americans Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation and it was a lie. Then you trotted out a bunch of Nobel laureate economists saying Donald Trump would destroy the economy. It's simply not true. Now you got 75 Nobel laureates saying Robert Kennedy Jr. should not be confirmed to Health and Human Services. The best way to get Robert F. Kennedy Jr. confirmed is to trot out a bunch of arrogant progressive Nobel laureates to say he shouldn't. That is an affirmative permission structure for the GOP to endorse RFK and confirm his nomination. The left learns nothing and forgets nothing. They're like the Bourbons of France. The members of the press do not understand how discrediting it was to release a list of national security experts saying that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation when it turned out to be true, because it destroyed the credibility of the national security apparatus of this country. It is why there are conspiracy theorists about the Trump shooter. It is why the assassin, would-be assassins. It is why there are conspiracy theories about Louis Mangione. It is why there are conspiracy theories about healthcare in this country, because you had so many prominent members of the expert elite class cast doubt on something that was never in doubt. And now people question all the experts all the time because of those people, including this. This will help RFK.